Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. I want to start today with the total abandonment of American women. Total abandonment. Honestly, this press corps couldn't give two craps about the actual state of American women today. What they care about is that you can kill a baby in utero. Beyond that, they have absolutely no use for women. That's where I want to start today, after what I've witnessed this weekend around Kamala Harris and her absurd media behavior. Now, currently the media is enjoying a round of girl boss moments. Have you checked anything on the web today? What a girl boss Kamala Harris is, as a result of her decision to appear on the podcast Call Her Daddy, which normally traffics in shows entitled, quote, F me with a dildo, end quote, not kidding. But this weekend decided that presidential politics may in fact be their thing. It isn't. It isn't. It was an utter fail. I don't know shit about sports. Sorry, I don't know anything about sports. As you guys know, occasionally sports becomes a news story and I'll talk about it. But I'm very quick to disclose I don't know anything about it. And I certainly would never be the person purporting to do an important interview of a sports figure who's in the center of some sports storm, as opposed to just my role over here as a random commentator when it becomes news. That's the position this person was in. You played with fire and you got burned, and you misled and you failed at an important moment in presidential history. There's so much to go through. The particular moment that's being celebrated this morning had Kamala Harris responding in this interview to a barb from Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. It was akin to the childless cat lady remarks from J.D. Vance, which were years ago, right? He made those comments 3 or 4 years ago. They got brought up again against him once he was named as Trump's running mate. And for some reason, Huckabee Sanders thought it might be a great idea to double down on them. She said last month at a town hall the following.
As my eyes fill with tears, my sweet daughter reaches up, pats my shoulder, and says, "It's okay, Mommy. One day you can be pretty too." So my kids keep me humble. Unfortunately, Kamala Harris doesn't have anything keeping her humble.
She didn't need that last line. She didn't need it. It was dumb politics. And I love Huckabee Sanders, but this is stupid for Republicans to keep doing this. Okay, so Harris goes on this podcast and the host brought it up, and here was Kamala Harris's response.
I don't think she understands that there are a whole lot of women out here who, one, are not aspiring to be humble.
Oh, Lord.
Two, a whole lot of women out here who have a lot of love in their life, family in their life, and children in their life. And I think it's really important for women to lift each other up. I have 2 beautiful children, Cole and Ella, who call me Mamala. We have a very modern family. My husband's ex-wife is a friend of mine, and I love those kids to death. And family comes in many forms, and I think that increasingly, all of us understand that, this is not the 1950s anymore. Families come in all kinds of shapes and forms.
All right. First of all, it is absurd for anyone on Team Trump to be ripping on someone else for not being humble enough. Okay? This just was not a smart attack. Second, did the GOP not learn its lesson with the J.D. Vance comments and the blowback, which he's still laboring under? I understand what he was trying to say. We've talked about it on this show. He gave me his first interview. We went through it all. But there's no question that This is not a smart line of attack that the right should double and triple down on. You heard when Tucker came on this show, he expressed that he felt bad. He said, as a cable news host, I think I egged him into that, and I was kind of snarky, and I wish I hadn't, and I'm sorry for it. Stop doubling and tripling down on this dumb attack, okay? Not having biological kids is not disqualifying for someone who wants to hold higher office, nor does any presidential candidate have a lot of humility. Okay, it would be great if they could find some. It would be great. But anyway, for the love of God, Kamala Harris has enough real and deeply disturbing personality traits and policies to actually attack her on. This one is not necessary. But as for the way Kamala Harris actually responded to this, it's not a girl boss moment. It wasn't empowering. It was off-putting. Everyone who runs for office should be looking for a little humility, for a little opportunity to be humble. All the leaders should. We don't need God-complex presidents thinking they alone know best when it comes to free speech, Madam Vice President, or forever wars, right? She has virtually no governing experience. She was a lifelong prosecutor who then spent 3.5 years in the vice presidency doing ribbon-cutting events. Her one actual responsibility was the border, and we all know how that went. But had she actually spent the last term governing and making decisions for this country, I think she would likely realize that humility might actually be a good thing, not something she needs to eschew just to sound tough. We're not looking to be humble. Okay. I mean, honestly, to me, it was like the exact same thing as I eat no for breakfast, that routine she's been giving. It shows a fragile ego. She's insecure. She doesn't have the goods, and she knows we know. We do know, Kamala. We all see it. Well, today that story's everywhere. It's everywhere. The media's loving this comeback she gave. You go, girl. So the system is working exactly as it has been lately, and as the Democrats think it should. The Democratic presidential candidate avoids virtually all real questions in the press, right? Like she's in a new form of the Presidential Protection Program. She goes instead on some sex podcast where she knows she will get no tough questions. She gets digitally filleted by the host, and then the sycophant media gets off on the performance, telling us all how good it was. It is the presidential equivalent of a visit to the Amsterdam red light district or the 1970s Times Square back alleys. They all need a shower, and we are all feeling grosser for having heard about or witnessed it in the first place. Okay. Here's the real problem, though. Not one of those media enablers has reported on the story that we may be about to put a woman abuser in the White House as, quote, first gentleman. Doug Emhoff, the husband of Kamala Harris, has been accused of assaulting his ex-girlfriend not 12 years ago, in front of a red carpet gala on the street in France in 2012, right before he met Kamala Harris. And not a single one of these same guffawing media outlets has written one word about it. We discussed this in detail on Friday's show. Now, we understand that Ms. Harris sat for this particular interview the day prior to the Daily Mail report breaking the news of Emhoff's alleged assault. Fair enough. The host did not know. But Kamala Harris almost certainly did. And listen to her go on that podcast and talk about what a champion of women Harris is.
We still have so far to go on the issue of child sexual assault. Just like in a previous time, the issue of domestic violence. People didn't talk about domestic violence. And part of it was this really warped idea that, well, what happens in the home is none of our business. But if it happened on the street, it would be our business if we witnessed it on the street. And so the point being that abuse of anyone is something we should all take seriously, as opposed to saying it's not our business. It's something that we have to agree should not happen, and whatever resources and whatever attention we can put into reducing the likelihood that it happens is worthwhile.
If it happened on the street, it would be our business. You heard it from her directly. If it happened on the street, it's our business. Abuse of anyone is something we should all take seriously, as opposed to saying it's not our business. And whatever attention we can put into reducing the likelihood that it happens is worthwhile. Then do that. Madam Vice President, do that. Because this did allegedly happen on the street, so it is our business by your rule. This is something some of us are taking seriously, as is your rule. And we here at the MK Show, as well as at the Daily Mail, which broke this story, are putting attention into reducing the likelihood that it happens to someone else by reporting on the story. Madam, why won't you follow your own rules? We've gotten no comment from you at all. An unknown campaign spokesperson gave a benign statement to Semaphore saying the report is untrue. Any suggestion that Mr. Emhoff would have or has ever hit a woman is false. Totally generic and doesn't respond to the vast majority of the report. You've sat idly by and you've celebrated as this media has made a hero out of your husband, knowing about the nanny. And if the second Daily Mail report is true, knowing that he paid her $80,000 to stay silent after she lost their baby, which she blames on him. You watched as they said he has single-handedly redefined masculinity, that he's a wife guy, that, quote, supporting women is just something he's always done. What a crock. We played you the Jen Psaki stuff on Friday. Another so-called journalist actually had Doug Emhoff sit for an interview after the Daily Mail story broke. What a get. Great. Maybe he'll ask him, does anyone give a damn about domestic violence? Maybe this guy does. Abuse of a woman in public on the street? Kamala Harris says we have to pay attention to that kind of thing. Here's Tim Miller of The Bulwark, an entity whose very existence is due to their deep loathing of one thing, Donald Trump.
I don't mind taking shit. I actually kind of like it and revel in it. Like, I don't mind if some jerk is whatever attacking me. I don't mind the harassment. It's fine. I don't like it when my kid gets brought into it, and I do sometimes react poorly. And that has happened over the past few months, and that happens to you all the time. I mean, your kids are getting targeted. I see Ella getting targeted. I just kind of wonder how you process that, how you deal with it.
Well, first of all, sorry that what you're going through.
Oh, come on. It's nothing compared to what
it's we got to call it all out. I mean, look, you're a journalist. We believe in a free press. We need strong journalists out there calling it out. And for you guys to be able to do your job, you can't do it being threatened and being targeted. And that's part of their game too. It's all a distraction. So the attacks on me personally, the kids, Kamala, look, it's not fun, especially when it hits the kids. But right now we have a mission, and that mission is to win this election.
Okay. They were talking about attacks, including attacks on his daughter, Ella, for whom I have nothing but sympathy. I feel bad for this young woman. Can you imagine having your dad cheat on your mom with your nanny? And then create a love child who then gets miscarried, according to the Daily Mail, allegedly because of something your dad did. That's the claim. What we know is true, because he's admitted it, is he knocked up the nanny while he was married to this child's mother. So that's disgusting. But here he'd like to play the victim. It's not nice to make fun of that child or any of the children. We haven't done that here on this show. But I am interested in what happened to the nanny, and I'm very interested in what happened to the girlfriend on the street, Kamala, in Cannes, France, less than 2 years before you started up with this guy. And for Tim Miller to not ask him one question about the allegation that he's a woman beater is a disgusting failure. It is yet another dereliction of journalistic duty, and he does consider himself a journalist now, amazingly. I don't even care if you do. I don't care if you consider yourself a journalist, a sex podcast host, whatever. You get this guy sitting in front of you, You ask the question that is in the news that he's now responded to through a campaign spokesperson to ask whether he actually hit his girlfriend in 2012 outside of a red carpet gala in Cannes, France, and whether there will ever be tape of such a thing, or if that person is not actually, wasn't the subject of his abuse, why won't he put her forward? Can we expect to hear from her? Because you guys out there know if you were wrongly accused of hitting or punching a girlfriend and you didn't do it, you would go to her and say, please tell the world this is a lie. Where is she? Why hasn't he? Why didn't you ask Tim Miller? This media is too busy celebrating her girl boss moment to talk about the fact that on her arm, she may be escorting a woman abuser right into the Oval. Easter egg hunt, Christmas tree party, all of that. Great. How many women are going to get to go and have Doug Emhoff put their arm around them if she becomes president at the White House Christmas party and wonder whether he used that same arm to smack a girlfriend across the face because she allegedly placed her hand on the shoulder of a valet to get a cab? I mean, this is just, we've fallen so far, I can barely hold on. I'm holding on by my fingertips to see a press corps that I recognize as vigorous and honest and not owned by anyone in power. As for the rest of the Harris interview on this sex podcast, which I realize does other things besides sex, but not many. I've never listened to this thing a day in my life. My team has pulled sound bites, which I think might be too filthy for us to actually play. But I gave you the feel for what she does. The young host admits at the top, to her credit, that she's not the one who should be asking questions about the economy, immigration, or fracking. Good. I appreciate that. And there might be a lane for her to ask questions. But in this position, a month out from the election, one has to stop and ask oneself, why did she come to me? Am I being used? And do I really want to be this person's stooge? Instead, what appears to have happened here was the host decided to make the entire interview about the area she claims to know best, women, women's rights. All right, I'm listening. Do you? Like you say, you talk about it all the time. Actually, what that turned out to mean, not a surprise, given that this is an obvious leftist, is one thing: abortion. Abortion, abortion, and more abortion. And sure enough, that is what we got. We got the now oft-repeated lie that Georgia's abortion laws caused a young mother of one son to die as she was trying to abort her twins. In fact, she died of malpractice when, after taking the abortion drug, she was forced to wait too long for a perfectly legal D&C by her Georgia doctors. Her family should sue over that. We got a lie from Kamala Harris that the GOP wants to take away women's birth control, which is not true. We got the host seemingly upset that Trump has called Ms. Harris names in the past, like dumb. The question was, how does that affect you when he calls you those names? Well, gee, how do you think it affects Trump to be called a sexual predator by Kamala Harris, a fraudster, a criminal, Hitler by her top surrogates and supporters? Might that warrant a response of, she's crazy, she's fake, she's dumb, which are the adjectives the host brought up. You might want to contextualize your question so that the audience has some idea that these didn't come out of nowhere. The host seemed particularly bothered by Trump telling women at a rally in Pennsylvania not long ago that he would be their protector if he's returned to the Oval Office. Harris was allowed to rail on how that was a lie because he hand-selected the 3 judges who participated in overturning Roe versus Wade in the Dobbs opinion. And that was exactly what this host wanted to hear. I wonder if the host cares anything about issues affecting women other than abortion. Like, does she care that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have changed Title IX with the stroke of their pen? And they've allowed boys and men's to take over women's sports and redefined womanhood to begin with? And that Trump has promised to reverse that? That Trump has promised to remove men and boys from women's private spaces where they are being hurt all the time, raped in prisons, sexually assaulted in bathrooms and locker rooms, having their medals stolen, not to mention their innocence. Do you care? Or is it all about killing the baby in utero? I just wonder, because as a woman, I care about a lot of things. I care about where the country is on abortion rights. I think it's an interesting topic. But I really care about what happens to the women once they are born and live their lives. Here's you engage in an industry of filth. From what I read, here's terms you can understand it in. The young girls don't want a bunch of penises coming at them in their locker room, okay? I know you love that. That's the business that you're in, talking about all the times you've been on the receiving end of one, but I don't want it happening to my 13-year-old while she's trying to play soccer. You get that? Do you get it? Try to keep up. Because there are issues affecting women outside of the only one you give a shit about. Does this person know anything about the anti-sex trafficking law that Trump passed? Does she know he's promised to seriously increase sentencing for those who abuse women and girls down at the border as part of his immigration policies? How about the fact that we had no wars under Trump, as opposed to under the Biden-Harris regime, where we expressed and showed weakness right off the bat with the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, leading many experts have said directly to Putin feeling emboldened and invading Ukraine, not to mention what happened in Israel. In Ukraine, at least 10,000 civilians have died, including 3,000 women and almost 600 children. Does she care about that? Could those women consider themselves better protected when Trump was in office? Not to mention the 1,200 dead in Israel as of today, the 1-year mark, including almost 300 women and 29 children. And those who died in the retaliatory campaign in Gaza, and that goes on beyond. All of this is so infuriating. What bothers me is the hypocrisy of it. The hypocrisy of it. They want you to end that podcast thinking Kamala Harris is the one who will protect women, who cares about women. And none of these issues is even brought up. The whole thing is designed to make Trump the devil and Harris the savior of women's rights. And it's infuriating. Joining me now, Andrew Klavan. He's host of the Andrew Klavan Show. He's out with a new book, a highly anticipated mystery novel titled A Woman Underground. Available now for pre-order. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. Health has been a big topic around the country over the past few weeks, right? And one thing we don't talk about enough is how exercise plays a vital role in that. And it's not just cardio. We really need to look at strength training. More muscle helps to boost metabolism and helps as we age. But let's face it, many are intimidated when it comes to lifting weights at a gym, not to mention the fact that we're all busy and we don't necessarily have the time. This is where Jacked Up Fitness comes in. They bring the gym to you. A full machine that fits in your house and does it all. It's an all-in-one home gym. It allows you to do multiple strength training exercises, and best of all, it comes with access to their app, which includes multiple workouts where you just push play and follow along. Jacked Up Fitness is an American company, and they are giving 900 machines this year to the Wounded Warrior Project. So if you're looking to take charge of your health and help veterans on their road to recovery, order your home gym today at getjackedup.com and enter code MK for a 10% discount on your own home gym. Andrew, welcome back to the show. What do you make of my opening comments?
Oh, it's good to see you. And I think, this is one of the key issues of this election. This is one of the things this election is going to decide. The American media has protected Kamala Harris far more efficiently than the Secret Service has protected Donald Trump. And one of the things I think that this election is going to decide is whether the people are going to ask to be lied to for another 4 years, whether they're going to trust the same media that lied to them about Donald Trump and Russia, that lied to them about COVID and the vaccine, that has lied to them about Joe Biden and whether he was competent to hold office. Do these people still have the sway that they used to have back in the day when the media controlled basically the flow of information? I personally don't think so. I'm kind of optimistic about this. I think when people look at Kamala Harris going on a dopey show like Call Her Daddy, I don't blame the girl and Call Her Daddy for interviewing her. That's a big opportunity for her. She has no capacity to do an intelligent political interview, so that's not a problem. But don't the people look at that and say, why is this woman who's asking not just to run the country, but to be the leader of the free world, why doesn't she face down the kind of hostile questions that Donald Trump faces down as he walks across the street, as he walks to his plane? He stops and talks to people who despise him. But Kamala Harris goes on Stephen Colbert. She goes on places where she knows she's going to be treated with kid gloves. And I guess I'm wondering, because I don't think anyone knows the answer or will know the answer until the election is over. Are the people really suckers like this? Are they really going to let this woman, unvetted almost completely, get into the Oval Office? And I'm hopeful that it's not going to happen. I'm hopeful that over the weeks, I understood the surge of emotion that came upon the Democrat Party when a dead candidate, Joe Biden, was removed for a living candidate, Kamala Harris. I understood that was kind of an up for them. But at some point, it shouldn't take more than 30 days. At some point, you can't help but think, aren't the wise people among the Democrats going to say, oh, this is a fraud, this is a phony? I think you're absolutely right about one thing, Megyn. The Republicans can be terrible fools. They're outnumbered. The press has them outnumbered. The press takes any gaffe they make and turns it into a major, major scandal where it doesn't matter what Kamala or Tim Walz says. They'll bury it. But still, I think you're absolutely right that the GOP has done a bad job of defining what it is that makes Kamala Harris so bad. They throw out words like radical, which don't really have any resonance. They do things like pick on the fact that she has no children, which is utter nonsense. But they don't really get at the fact that this is a party that has become anti-American. This is a party that has a theory. They have a theory of anti-colonialism, that it's countries like America that are the problem, that America became strong by bleeding the weak, by bleeding people of different colors, and it's America that needs to be weakened and destroyed, and American allies who are the problem. And Kamala Harris is one of these people. She believes these things. Tim Walz is definitely one of them. He's appointed a man to help rejigger the education system in Minnesota, who has said that America needs to be overthrown. America needs to be deconstructed and overthrown. So these are people who have beliefs that are antithetical to what a majority of Americans, left and right, believe. And the GOP has not done the job it should do in bringing this out. If they're waiting for the press to do it, don't hold your breath, because it's not going to happen. But I think you are absolutely right that they have not guided their attacks in the kind of sharp, incisive way they need to get people to see who this really is. She's a bad hat, and she does not love this country that she's asking to lead.
I wouldn't be giving this host a hard time if she said, I don't, like some of these guys that Trump has sat with, they haven't asked him hard questions, but they own it. They're like, shit, I don't know anything about anything. Let's talk about drugs. Let's talk, right? Okay. That what this person said was, I'm not going to get into fracking, the economy, or immigration, because that's not my thing. But this is what she actually said. I'm all about women. This show has been rooted in supporting women and talking about women and lifting women up. And then she goes on to say, because there's no denying we've always been underserved and we are second-class citizens to men. We've been treated like second-class citizens to men. The same old, tropes we've heard from sort of first wave and many wave feminists for a long time. Okay, great. Now you have my attention in a different lane, right? I was listening first as a journalist, but now you check that. So I get it. This isn't going to be that kind of interview for now. But now you want my attention as a woman. Okay, I'm paying attention to that. Everyone on the left, and she purports to want to appeal to both leftists and rightists on her show, lefties and righties, that she doesn't want to get political. A lot of the people, there's a major backlash against her today because she apparently does have some more conservative listeners once the show has gone, to expand beyond discussing men's testicles, which is literally what she does. She probably got a couple of conservatives in there. She started to get a little bit more self-helpy, and she doesn't want to lose them. So she comes out to say like, I thought a lot about whether I should do this. Well, I have a little lesson for you, madam. Conservatives care about a lot more than whether they can kill their babies in utero. A lot. Like some of the issues that I just outlined. And instead, what we got was this person coming out and calling herself the host a privileged white woman that lives in Los Angeles, so I'm very aware of that. Okay. That's not how conservatives want to hear you talk about yourself. We're not obsessed with color or privilege or any of that nonsense. And they wouldn't allow Kamala Harris to get away with saying, you don't have to abandon your faith or deeply held beliefs to agree with her position on abortion, that you can talk to your priest and still emerge totally fine with abortion. That's a fail, madam. You can defend abortion if you want, but not on those grounds. She gets a pass on it. She didn't know that Kamala Harris was the first sitting vice president to ever go to Planned Parenthood. Why didn't you know that? I thought you were all about women's rights, right? Isn't that your mecca, Planned Parenthood? That's what every leftist woman loves and lifts up is Planned Parenthood. She let her get away with the contraception law. She let her get away with the Amber Thurman lie. She let her get away with the nonsense about Trump saying that babies are dying on the table after birth. She teased it up saying, in the debate, Trump claims some states are executing babies after birth. Can you just clarify? As though Kamala Harris is this independent witness who's just going to clear it up for her. And Kamala returns with more of a nonsense answer that doesn't acknowledge babies are being allowed to die on the table post-birth. Ladies, pay attention. Here's that exchange.
I do want to clarify something. In the debate, former President Trump claimed that some states are executing babies after birth. Can you just clarify?
That is not happening anywhere in the United States. It is not happening, and it's a lie. It's a bold-faced lie that he is suggesting that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? He is suggesting that women in their 9th month of pregnancy are electing to have an abortion. Are you kidding? That is so outrageously inaccurate, and it's so insulting.
Okay. Andrew, my point is, if you say your lane is all about women and you introduce these topics, a modicum of information should be thrust into your brain. Try to put away the discussions about the testicles for 2 minutes and think about your research, all right? Execute may not be the right word, but there is an issue of born alive babies being allowed to die without the doctors surrounding them on the table doing anything to help them. It's happening in multiple states, including her running mate's home state of Minnesota, where 24 babies have been allowed to die on the table since 2015. Tim Walz reversed the mandate that they be helped in 2023 and also pulled all reporting requirements. So we have no idea. It could be double 24 by this point because they no longer have to tell us how many babies born after a botched abortion are allowed to just die with no help on the table. I don't even know what the word is that I'm looking for. It's hypocrisy. It's laziness. It's this newfangled, like, I am woman, hear me roar, because you get a very successful podcast, and good for her. I begrudge her none of her success. But if you're going to venture over into a lane that could determine the future of the country, and you're going to bring up issues that could determine people's votes, do your homework.
Just to give a little sympathy to this woman, she's obviously a dope. I mean, that's the first thing. She asked Kamala Harris to name a law that restricted the bodies of men the way an anti-abortion law would, I guess, restrict the bodies of women. And my first thought was, well, there's a law saying I can't use my body to kill someone else's body. I mean, there's a law that restricts the bodies of men in the same exact way that an anti-abortion law restricts the bodies of women.
Well, let me ask you this, Andrew. How do you think it would go for, maybe not you, because you, like I, are longer in the tooth. How do you think it would go for Spencer if we got into an all-out war with Iran in the Middle East and we had to implement the draft? Do you think Spencer would be able to say, my body, my choice, I'm not going? Pretty sure that affects his body in a profound way.
But consider this for just a minute. Those lies that Kamala was just telling about the fact that babies can be left to die in Minnesota, as you said, Tim Walz oversaw taking out the restriction of keeping a baby alive. It was taken out of the law in Minnesota. It was in there, and then they took it out so that babies can be left to die, and they have been left to die. But consider this. At the debate between Trump and Kamala Harris, the moderators from one of our major news outlets also supported that lie. They also let that lie pass and actually said, oh, no, this doesn't exist anywhere. They basically said what Kamala said on that podcast. So you're being a little hard on this podcasting dope when our major journalists from one of our mainstream networks did the exact same thing.
Fair point. Yeah. Well, I mean, look, she does have her areas of expertise. I mean, I'm not going to take that away from her. Here's a sample of some of her work in SOT 16.
How do you work with the balls and the asshole on a man?
The balls, like, it really depends on the guy. Like, some guys don't like it.
Yeah.
Some have less sensitivity and you can tug on them,
Yes.
put them all in your mouth.
Yeah.
Like, some
Other guys are like, fuck.
Yeah, it hurts whenever
Yeah.
you try to do it.
And it's so interesting to always see, like, the difference in the balls, because some have, like, really tight, smaller
Really
ones,
saggy
and then
ones.
other really saggy.
Interesting fact about Mike, I don't know if this is every guy, but he has something that we call, like, morning balls. In the morning, they're, like, super tight, like, sucked up, like, looks like a 12-year-old.
Wait, what?
Yes, they're, like, really tight and perky in the morning, and then at nighttime, they're, like,
Slowly sag
they're, like,
down.
all saggy out, like grandpa balls.
Wait, that's so interesting.
I'm sorry. But this is
now I got to
disgusting.
pour bleach in my ears for that.
This is disgusting. What kind of a person, like very classy of Kamala Harris to sit down with a person. Weird that the subject of Doug Emhoff's balls did not come up. Does he have morning balls? Did he when he banged the nanny? What were his balls like when he was abusing his ex-girlfriend? What has happened to us?
I'm a little disappointed that she didn't ask those questions. That would have been at least a more interesting interview than the ones we've been getting from Kamala Harris. But again, don't you think that people are looking at this and see that this is a dodge, that they are being mistreated? The voter is being disrespected here. I mean, it's not Kamala Harris who's being disrespected. It's not Donald Trump. It's not this girl running the podcast. It's the people who have a right to know what this woman is going to do at 3:00 in the morning when we find out that Iran has launched a missile, not just at Israel, but at us. You know, that's the job she's running for. She's not running for Mamala. You know, she's not running to be our maiden aunt. She's running to run a country that has been driven into a serious state of disrepair and crisis on her watch, on the watch of her administration. And it's no good saying, well, she was just the vice president. The president himself has said she was in on everything. She, as far as he was concerned, she was just as qualified as he is, which I would agree with. She is just as qualified as he is. But I think that, you know, I just have to wonder, and I think if we have a country in which people can watch what you just showed and watch the kind of conversation that Kamala Harris is opening herself to, and say, yes, you know, that, by golly, that's the lady I want in the White House, then maybe, you know, unfortunately, we get what they deserve. I mean, I think that is the question. At some point, when you've been lied to once, twice, 3 times, 4 times on major issues, as the American news media has lied to us over the last 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, on several issues of tremendous importance. Once you've been shut up and silenced, and once you've seen how people are silenced who disagree with the agenda that's being put forth by the media, do you not say, I'm done? I'm not voting for these people? Even the people who hate Donald Trump, I can understand why people don't like Donald Trump. I can't understand why they would vote for Kamala Harris. What has she said? What has she done? What has she accomplished that they support? The only people I can see supporting Kamala Harris with a full heart are the people who stormed onto the campuses after October 7th a year ago and said, wow, we really are we're rooting for Hamas. We really want all these Jews to be killed. We think this is great anti-colonialism. Those are the people I guess can support Kamala Harris. But who else is looking at her and thinking, yep, that's my president because of the things that she has said and done? And so this podcast, it's indicative. I mean, if she goes on Stephen Colbert, if she goes on places where they basically just want to promote her because they haven't got the brains God gave a goose, you know, I guess this is part of that. If that's what you're going to fall for, that's what you're going to fall for. But there has to be, if for this country to continue, we have to please beg God that there is a large contingent of people, even to the left of center, who are looking at this and saying, I just can't pull the trigger on this. I cannot put a vote in for this empty woman who really is hiding a very, very radical agenda, a very anti-American agenda behind these soft soap interviews and these soft soap answers.
Here is the clip that they have released ahead of the 60 Minutes interview. There are two, actually, now. The one they released over the weekend was about Netanyahu and whether he's a close ally. Look at SOT 17.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, so she won't call Netanyahu an ally. And I have no idea what the first part said. She makes no sense. I'll say one thing. On the sex podcast, she made sense because it was her favorite issue too. Kamala Harris loves abortion. She loves talking about abortion. And by the way, she was definitely edited on that show. There's no doubt in my mind they cleaned up her answers. You could tell on some of the clipped answers that they had done her a solid of clipping, which should be disclosed. In any event, she made no sense on a topic that's really important, the Middle East, and then refused to call Netanyahu an ally. So it doesn't seem like it's going very well. We're going to see the 60 Minutes interview tonight instead of last night because the show was preempted due to some special. And there's a possibility now, you tell me, Andrew, that the reason we now hear she's going on The View, Howard Stern, and Colbert tomorrow is that it didn't go so well for her when she sat down with 60, and she's anticipating needing to change the narrative.
It never goes well with her when she is asked any serious question. I mean, it really doesn't. I cannot remember a shining moment when Kamala Harris was challenged by a not altogether in the tank journalist and came back with an answer that made you think, wow, this woman really has a grasp on the issues. And this Israel issue, this war in the Middle East that started, as you say, because of Joe Biden's weakness, this is one of the most serious issues that exposes who these people are. You know, I don't want to go back too far into the past, but there's a way in which this war, and this is the anniversary of October 7th, so it's worth talking about. There's a way in which this war is Barack Obama's war. Dinesh D'Souza was put in a halfway house for 8 months, sentenced to 8 months in a halfway house for nothing, for a minor campaign contribution infraction, because he pointed out that if you read Obama's works closely, you will see that he is an anti-American, anti-colonialist who thinks America has to be weakened and cut back in order for the smaller countries of the world to be free. And in keeping with that philosophy, the reason they put Dinesh in jail for saying that is because it was absolutely 100% true. And in keeping with that philosophy, he sought to strengthen the terrorist American-hating country of Iran, who wants to destroy Israel, but only on the way to destroying us. Donald Trump took the agreement that Obama worked so hard to put in place with Iran, an agreement that Netanyahu said would pave the way for Iran to get a nuclear weapon. He said it won't block the way, it will pave the way to Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump repealed that agreement and put sanctions on Iran that kept them helpless for 4 years, kept them quiet for 4 years. The minute Biden got back in office, he gave all the money back, took all the sanctions away and put that agreement back in place so that Iran is now apparently hours away from making a nuclear weapon. That philosophy that has strengthened the America-hating country of Iran is the same philosophy that brought the students out into the quads on October 7th cheering for the murder of Jews and the rape and murder of women. Murders so heartless, so cruel that they're almost unbearable to think about. And yet those students were cheering them because they're being taught the same things by the same professors who taught Obama, the same kinds of professors who taught Obama. This is what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz also believe that this country is the problem, that Iran can be strengthened and make the Middle East a better place. It's obvious. There are still, I think, 97 hostages in place. It's common decency. You don't even have to be a geopolitical genius. It's simple common decency that you do not negotiate with these people, that you do not call for a ceasefire, that you back Netanyahu 100% until every damn one of those hostages are released. And instead, they're picking on Netanyahu. He's the problem. He's the problem somehow. And they have, he must be running, Netanyahu must be running in places on his back for them to stab him, because they have been done nothing but stab him since this debacle began. And when people are drowning in North Carolina and in Georgia, their houses are being wiped away, and Kamala Harris is issuing statements about the poor Lebanese who are suffering because Israel is doing what it has to do to fight Hezbollah, who is Iran, just like Hamas is Iran. It just shows you that they're not on track to support this country, that they are asking you to put a woman in the Oval Office who does not feel that this country is the last best hope on earth. And I don't mind if some radical professor wants to hold that idea, but I think electing presidents who do not believe in this country, like we did with Obama, I think it's a big mistake. I think when you have a president, when you have someone leading the country, he should love the country. He should put this country first. He should want to build it up. He should want to make America great again. And I don't think there's any chance that Kamala Harris wants those things either openly, philosophically, or deep down in her heart. And I think it's a dangerous thing. And I think she has revealed it at times, but this is what the press is hiding. This is what the press is doing so much work to keep from us, is that she is not on our side, but she wants to lead us. Very dangerous situation.
She wouldn't even say Israel. Israel is our very close ally. She just talked about the Israeli people, which there is a distinction there that she's trying to get around. I mean, it's amazing to me, 1 year after this horrific terrorist attack on Israel that took the lives of so many innocents, we're in the place where our possible next president won't say that Israel or Netanyahu are close allies, gives us a bunch of gobbledygook. I don't know what she said. Our work has resulted in movements. I have no idea what she was saying. And I don't think she did either, as Trump said about Biden. And that really the Hamas propaganda campaign, which was incredibly effective, continues to lead to massive demonstrations in the streets of America and around the world in their favor. If you went back and asked Hamas, though it's been blown apart by Israel, in retaliation for what Hamas did, if you went back and asked whoever's left, was it worth it? I don't think you'd find one to say no. I think they'd all say yes, it was worth it. Look at the worldwide sympathy for them that's been generated.
It happens every time Israel goes to war. Every time. And since the beginning, since Israel's founding, it has happened every time. We have stopped them from the victory that they need to complete the defense of their country. We say they have the right to exist, but that's soft war. That's nothing, the right to exist. Everybody has the right to exist. Do they have the right to exist as a Jewish state and not be under fire and not have people trying to obliterate them? It is amazing to me that there are those on the right, the Groypers, the anti-Semites, who basically who call themselves America first and yet support the people who say death to America. But it is not amazing. It is not amazing that the left supports Iran and despises Israel. This is the important thing for people to understand. This is not an accident. This is not like if they only knew. This is not like, if you could just open their eyes, then people wouldn't be saying, we're queers for Palestine, where queers would be killed, or women for Palestine, where women would be virtually enslaved. It's not that they're ignorant. It's that they have been taught a philosophy that makes good evil and evil good. That is the problem, that in our universities, people are being taught a philosophy. Obama was one of them, that actually makes good bad and bad good. And it's so important for people on the right to understand. I think J.D. Vance understands it, but I'm not sure that Donald Trump quite grasps it, to understand that we're dealing with a philosophy that is antithetical to the health of America. And it's not stupidity. It's not the fact that they don't know which river and which sea they're chanting about. It's about the fact that they've been taught to see the world ideologically in a certain way that makes us the villains in the world. The ideology isn't true. It isn't true that countries become powerful by leeching off the weak. What is true is that countries that are powerful sometimes spread in power over the weak, and sometimes that's very helpful. I think the British Empire was actually a net positive to the world. I think America's not an empire, but I think America hegemony has been a good for the world. There is nobody in any university, in any major university in America, who agrees with me. And so they're teaching our students, our young people, for the money we pay them, the money the federal government gives them. They're teaching our young students this hatred of America, which also is hatred of Israel, which also is hatred of the Jews, because all of those entities represent the West and its freedoms. And it's the freedoms that have made us as strong and as powerful as we are.
All right, we have more with Andrew coming up, including President Biden's message from the White House, and President Trump returns to Butler. What an appearance. Imagine waking up one day to find out your home no longer belongs to you, that someone somewhere has stolen your property right out from under you. It sounds unthinkable, but it's a sad reality for some American homeowners and a risk for anyone that owns property. House stealing, that's what the FBI calls it. It's a form of real estate fraud where scammers leverage loopholes in the system to fraudulently transfer your home's title into their name, and then they take out loans against your property or even sell it behind your back. By the time you find out, the scammer's long gone, leaving you, the legitimate homeowner, to clean up the mess. But right now, triple lock protection is available through HomeTitleLock.com, offering 24/7 title monitoring, alerts, and restoration services. You can sign up today at HomeTitleLock.com and use promo code Megyn for 30 days of protection for free and a comprehensive title scan to make sure you're not already a victim. That's promo code Megyn and HomeTitleLock.com or by using the link below. As Kamala Harris is out there Friday, it's interesting to me because I think she's having a change in strategy right now. And Jen Psaki seemed to be suggesting the same. But I do think it's interesting that suddenly she's blanketing the field when it comes to media, not real journalism. But, going on The View is obviously not real journalism. Colbert, same. Howard is a fun show. He'll ask her some serious questions, but he's obviously a fan. But, you know what you're getting when you go on those programs. And she's doing more of it than she has. So to me, that tells me, yes, possibly 60 didn't go well, but I think zoom out and what it tells me is the campaign's not going well. The numbers are not moving. And she's got to do something else, because if she thought she were winning, she would certainly not be taking the risks of speaking without her prompter. She doesn't like to do that, and she's not good at it. In fact, there was an issue, was she in Detroit just the other day, where she tried to speak and she was on prompter and she felt good. She was in Flint, Michigan, and you could see the prompter froze and panic set in. She can't do it without that prompter. Here's that moment. Look at this.
Mayor Neely, Senator Stabenow, Senator Peters, Representative Slotkin, who we will elect to the United States Senate.
She still has the prompter there.
32 days until the election.
Here it freezes. Uncomfortable pause. Deep sigh.
32 days. 32 days. Okay, we got some business
Keep saying
to do.
it.
We got some business to do. All right. 32 days. And we know we will do it. And this is going to be a very tight race until the very end. This is going to be a very tight race until the very end. We are the underdog, and we know we have some hard work ahead. But here's the thing about us. We like hard work. We like hard work. Hard work is good work.
Oh, my Lord.
Hard work is good work. And with your help in November, we will win. We will win. We are not playing around.
I'm so embarrassed for her, Andrew. You can imagine if
cringe
right?
moment. Yeah.
Imagine if she had to sit in front of your microphone and do your show for one day, just not as a guest, just as you, speaking extemporaneously about issues of the day without that prompter. 32 days, 32 days, 32 days. And then in front of the only reason she gets away with it is because the crowd is adoring of Democrats. So she can get away with saying hard work is good work. Hard work is good work. And get like a bunch of people to cheer that nonsense.
Compare it to Donald Trump, too. You know, I get frustrated with Trump sometimes, especially during debates when he hasn't got the detailed responses that I want him to have, because sometimes in the Kamala Harris debate, she just left herself open to be sliced and diced, and he couldn't quite bring that to bear. But he talks to everybody all the time. And you said quite rightly, he talks to people who are friendly toward him, but he also talks to people who just despise him. And he talks off the top of his head. He's not afraid to say what's on his mind. And one of the things that I think is actually incredibly appealing about Donald Trump is, you know, you're getting Donald Trump. There's nothing phony about the guy. I mean, you can hate him, you can love him, but there's certainly nothing phony about him. And Kamala Harris, where is she? Who is she? What is she actually like? We have no idea. We have no clue whatsoever. And every time, every single time, she was without a prompter or gets a question that comes out of left field and she doesn't see it coming, she unravels completely. She's like a ball of wool in the hands of a kitten. She just is taken to pieces. And, you know, compare her to Trump, but also compare her to J.D. Vance, who's an educated, articulate man who does have a grasp of the facts. And it's just embarrassing. It's embarrassing to think that she could be representing this country.
She, as she's out there campaigning, like almost at the same moment, Joe Biden comes for the first time ever into the White House briefing room and decides to start speaking to the press. And there's been a lot of speculation. I don't think it's crazy about whether this was an intentional attempt to undermine her, because here was the message. You'd think this would be a plus, but given his approval ratings and how people feel about this economy and the border, et cetera, it's not. It's not a nice thing to do. Here's what he said.
Can you talk about how your vice president, who is running for the presidency, has worked on these crises and what role she has played over the past several days?
Well, I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done, including passage of legislation which we were told we could never pass. And so she's been, and her staff is interlocked with mine in terms of all the things we're doing.
It took about 2 seconds for Team Trump to release this ad.
I'm in constant contact with her. She's aware we're singing from the same song sheet. She helped pass all the laws that are being employed now. She was a major player in everything we've done.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
I mean, on the other side, what was he supposed to say? You know, like she'll make a big change from my terrible policies. It's kind of hard to imagine what he could have answered. You know, thank God she'll rescue America from my terrible policies.
I really don't think she's done anything. I got to be honest. I think the one thing they asked her to do was be the border czar. She stunk. She didn't do anything, and that she's had no responsibility. I really do. That's what I think. I don't think they used her. She's a ribbon cutter. The vice president normally doesn't do anything unless your name is Dick Cheney. So I don't even count that job as part of her experience. I'm stuck with her in 2019 when she was running for the top job. She told us how she felt about everything. And I don't think she's really had any experience since then. She sat there not doing anything about the border and not doing anything else. And now she wants to sort of say she's this important person. Really? And there's really nothing to look at to see that she could be an able president of the United States. Listen to CNN reacting to the fact that as they were just about to go to the Harris campaign speech, Biden chose to come out. Watch.
I do have a note, and I'm curious what you think about this. We were actually about to go live to Vice President Kamala Harris, who's speaking right now in Detroit, Michigan, and apparently she's talking about this port strike ending. She's trying to appeal to union workers, and yet you have the President of the United States come out clearly overshadowing her, answering significant questions. Is that a communications mistake? Is the left hand not talking to the right hand in this situation?
That's a very good point. And if they were coordinated, as you assume they would be, this would not have happened.
It is interesting.
It's not too big a guess that Biden just hates her. You know, I mean, he obviously feels forced out of office. He actually believed he could win even after that disastrous debate. she and Kamala Harris did everything she could to bolster him up for as long as she could, but he was basically thrown out by his own party. It was a coup, and I don't think he's taken it well. Also, he hasn't got the cognitive coherence anymore to hide that fact. I don't think he can actually hide his rage. I thought the takeoff they did of him on Saturday Night Live was probably pretty close to the truth, where he was screaming, "I don't want to go. I didn't want to go." I think that's probably where he's at about now. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if he just hates this woman.
We've got some good SNL clips we'll play in a minute, but so you've got Kamala trying to like generate excitement out there in Flint, in Michigan. It doesn't go well. She loses prompter. Then she gets overshadowed by her former boss, well, current boss. He's still president. And at the same time, you've got the 60 Minutes interview, which we'll see tonight, the new interview strategy as of tomorrow. I mean, this is a big change. She's been doing almost nothing, so this is a lot to have added. I can't wait to see how it goes tonight, because if it goes relatively well and smoothly, it'll mean it's a legit change in strategy for the campaign. If 60 is a disaster, it will mean that what she's doing tomorrow is an attempt to distract from what happened on CBS. So we'll know in 24 hours. But surprisingly, they also put out Tim Walz, the emotional security support governor, went over by himself to Fox News and sat down with Shannon Bream on the Sunday show and told a bunch of lies. Here's one example: the Minnesota abortion law, where he made sure you could abort your baby all the way through the 9th month, and made sure that if after that abortion it were born nonetheless alive, you could let it suffer to death on the table. No requirement for life-saving care. Shannon brought that up in Side 18.
You signed the bill that makes it legal through all 9 months. Is that a position you think Democrats should advocate for nationally?
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that law goes far beyond Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That was been debunked on every occasion.
But wait. Let's agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her health care providers. This doesn't change anything. It puts the decision back on to the woman.
But you do acknowledge it takes out the language about preserving the life of an infant who was born alive.
Every doctor has an ethical responsibility to provide what they can in each situation. That is the way the law is written now.
No, it isn't. That doesn't even make sense, to provide what they can in each situation. What is that? We read the statutory language to our audience last week. We read the exact language. They used to have to provide life-saving care, and now they don't because of his strikeouts in the law he signed in 2023, and he also got rid of the reporting requirement, so we know how many babies this is happening to. Just a bunch of lies.
The guys at the Daily Wire are making fun of me about this, but I find this guy so creepy. I find something, it's not just almost every word out of his mouth. I was joking about it on one of the shows about how I keep waiting for Clarice Starling to show up and take him away, because he just seems like the kind of guy who has a girl in an oubliette in his basement. But I just, every word that comes out of his mouth is a lie. That big-eyed, look like he got caught in the headlights. There is just something so creepy about this guy. And you can tell it really is there by the fact that the press keeps telling us what a regular guy he is. He's a coach. He wears flannel shirts. He carries a gun and all this. And I just keep thinking, something, it's very cruel. If you ever watch, I'm sure you have watched little boys in school, they know immediately when some guy's not right. They start to bully him. They throw him out of the group. They can be very mean about it. That's the way I feel about this guy. I feel like if he came to if I'm in elementary school, he's the kid I'm going to start bullying, because there's just something wrong
honestly, especially when you realize he put tampons in your bathroom as a boy. So then,
that's a giveaway.
Shannon brings up the subject of his many, many lies. She strings a couple of them together to see what he'll say, and here's how that went.
You've modified your story or explained that you misspoke about things involving your military rank, about carrying a weapon in war, your 1995 DUI arrest, using IVF to have your beautiful children, Gus and Hope. Being in Hong Kong and China in the summer of 1989 during the Tiananmen events, what do you say to the American people who think, I don't know that I can trust this guy with all those modifications to be the potential commander-in-chief of this country?
Well, I think they heard me. They heard me the other night speaking passionately about gun violence and misspeaking. And I got to be honest with you, Shannon, I don't think people care whether I used IUI or IVF when we talk about this. What they understand is Donald Trump would resist those things. Look, I speak passionately. I had an entire career, decades before I was in public office. They know, and I'm very proud of my 24 years in service and my record. I will own up when I misspeak. I will own up when I make a mistake. Let's be very clear. On that debate stage the other night, I asked one very simple question, and Senator Vance would not acknowledge that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. I think they're probably far more concerned with that than my wife and I used IUI to have our child.
So, I speak passionately. I speak passionately. People don't care. I'm proud of my service. I will own up when I misspeak. I mean, it's amazing to me. I'd love if I had him. I have to say, I'd probably not string them together. I'd probably zero in particular, on the retired command sergeant major. You said it. I mean, it's so many times I've lost count. I would string the budded soundbite together of what we actually have of him on cam, and then I'd have all the written examples in front of me, and then I'd ask him, "Are you really asking this audience to believe that each one of those was you, quote, misspeaking? Isn't it more likely that you intentionally overstated the rank that you had achieved? And can you understand why military veterans are upset about it?" I mean, there's no answer to that. You can't, it's just more everything the guy says. He's pathological, Andrew, is a lie.
You know, it is absolutely true. First of all, that's why he hasn't come on your show. And if he does come on your show, please have security, because I'm telling you, the guy is really off somehow.
I feel like I wouldn't be his target.
But I just think the kinds of things he lies about really are offensive. I mean, the last time you and I were talking, I was saying, you know, I was given a T-shirt by the 101st Airborne. I won't wear it out of the house because I'm afraid that people might think I was serving in that unit. You know, I'm just not going to do it. And I think that the things he lies about being in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square, and then he said, "Oh, I got the dates wrong." That's like getting the date of 9/11 wrong. You know, if you're somewhere on 9/11, right, you know it. You know where you are. He lies, and he lies with that kind of weird, childlike irresponsibility, like he's never going to be caught. He's actually not ready for prime time. He's not ready for a national showing, except for the fact that the press, again, has drawn a circle around him and is trying to draw a circle around him anyway, and has, just like they've done for Kamala Harris. The press really is the problem. It's funny, it's boring in a way to say the press is the problem, because people are always blaming the press, and people always say, well, both sides hate the press. I don't think that's true. I think our press is corrupt, and it's corrupt in one direction.
Jen Psaki liked it. She decided that what we need in this change of strategy we're seeing from Harris-Walz is more Walz. Watch this.
Former President Obama is going to be out on the campaign trail. Liz Cheney was with her out on the campaign trail. Are you anticipating a strategy shift?
We've already seen them announce this, which I think is a great thing. Vice President Harris has a number of interviews she's doing over the next couple of weeks. Tim Walz, who I think is a huge asset, who hasn't been tapped into nearly enough for the last month, is going to be out there.
Is he? Is he, though? Is he a huge asset? I mean, sooner or later, you might get somebody who really gets to drill down, you know, with him on one of these. It'd be great to just, here's my recommendation. If anybody, you know, gets him and is an honest broker, just take one category. Take just the abortion, or just immigration, or just the lies, and drill. Because the way he gets away with it is just, you can only ask like one or two questions on it, and then you have to move on as the interviewer because you want to cover a lot of ground. But if you really I would love to show him the language of the Minnesota abortion law. Look at it. You're the governor. You signed it. You're way more familiar with this than I am. Why did you remove the part that says must give life-saving care? That's no longer in there. Now, what did you understand you were doing? It's your law, sir, right? Or take the lie. How could you not remember that you were not in Tiananmen? I mean, we're on the 1-year anniversary of 10/7. You know, if you were in Israel on 10/7, you would know, because people were being murdered all around you. Children, babies, innocents sitting and waiting for the bus. You'd know. Same as Tiananmen, frankly. The death toll wasn't as high, but the slaughter was absolutely shocking at the hands of the government. You'd know How could you have screwed that up over and over? Like, press it a little and see what he says.
Yeah. And, the question for me when people lie, sometimes people lie. I think Walz does this a lot. He lies to aggrandize himself, to make himself seem like more than he is and to make him seem more normal than he obviously is. But I think people also lie to hide stuff. And I think that this is the whole question of this campaign is what are they hiding? And as I said before, I think they're hiding a very anti-American agenda. These last 4 years have been very upsetting in some ways, not because of the failure of policies. Jimmy Carter had failed policies, but he didn't hate the country. He just made a mistake. He didn't know how things worked. He didn't actually know what made economies better, what made countries more secure. That's not what's happening now. This is an actual attack on our sovereignty and on our ability to be the leader of the free world and maybe even the hegemonic leader of the world in general. And I think that this is, again, a philosophy that has been piped down from the upper reaches of academia through the press, through the media, and has taken hold on a lot of the intellectuals and a lot of the intellects in our administrations and in our leadership. And I think that that's the sort of thing we should be going after. We should be exposing what they really believe. Why would you say that Lebanon should be the center of our sympathies when not only is Israel the one under attack, but North Carolina and Georgia are underwater? Why would you say that? Why would you say that the border, that it shouldn't be illegal to cross the border illegally? Why is that so? Why would you want to protect people as they're doing in California, where they've made it against the law to check somebody's ID as he comes to vote? When I was a kid, I wish they would have done that in liquor stores, but now they want to do it it's against the law to check someone's ID when he comes in to vote. Why would you do that? And why is there not one journalist who asks that question or asks the even more important question, who's running the country? Who right now is running America? It's amazing to me. I was a journalist for a period of time, a short period of time, but I was a journalist and I was okay. I was full of curiosity. I wanted to know. I didn't trust anybody. I didn't trust anybody in power. Why is not one journalist at any major venue saying, who's running the country? Who is making the decisions in this country? It's clearly
I have a theory on that.
Biden. Okay.
I have a theory. My theory is the left does not want to go there because they don't want her elevated up to the presidency between now and Election Day, because it'll be a lot harder for voters to say she's not responsible for any of this. Like, if she's the sitting president and things don't start turning around right away, that's not good for her. So the left doesn't want it. And the right doesn't want it because it will elevate her in a way that has the risk of making people not want to fire the first female Black president after 1 or 2 months in office. So they're just like, head down, we're going to have to stick with the guy who's in there because there's some risk in her being elevated for us. So both sides have an interest in not pushing it.
That's a really interesting thought, that if everybody has an interest in keeping quiet about it. But it does make me curious, because I want to know who was running the country before we suddenly discovered, to our shock and surprise, that Joe Biden wasn't capable of doing it, because it's been a long time. I mean, remember, Kamala and all the rest of them lied to us for a long time about just how sharp this Joe Biden, who was the best of all possible Joe Bidens, was before we found out. So who does run the country? I mean, is this a new idea that we're supposed to have, that there's just some blob of a bureaucracy that runs the country without any elected leadership? I suspect it is. I mean, that's all we heard during the Trump administration from the New York Times was, thank God we have an unelected government that's stopping Donald Trump from doing what the electors want him to do. But it's a really good theory, Megyn. I think you're probably exactly right. But I do wonder myself, like, what are we supposed to think? How are we supposed to think this country works now? Is the president just a figurehead? Is there somebody else that we can turn to? Is there somebody else we can hold responsible and vote out of office when they get it wrong? Because I don't know who that would be. And so I guess I want to know, because I want to know, when Kamala takes office, will it matter? Is it going to change anything?
Yeah.
Will
we notice anything?
The will to change things? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I assume we'll see her a little more than we see the current guy, because she is, 60. She's not 20, whatever he is, 200. But I don't know, because she's so awkward at the mic, they may just keep her underground. I do want to get back to the New York Times, because they did this unbelievable hit piece on Donald Trump and how old he's getting. I mean, the absolute nerve by the Times. But before we leave her change in media strategy, there is some reporting that it's a definite shift, as Jen Psaki alluded to there. NBC News, the headline is, Harris's campaign plans to ramp up its negative messaging about Trump. A new phase, that's new. A new phase aimed at trying to move the small number of undecided voters her way, according to 5 Harris campaign officials, driven in part by internal campaign data showing that sharper messaging against Trump could persuade some still unsure Americans. The numbers aren't moving, quote unquote, said a Harris campaign official speaking on the condition of anonymity. And on Friday, in a campaign speech at the Redford Township Fire Department in Detroit, Harris said the following about Trump and union workers. Take a listen.
We will not be fooled. We will not be gaslighted. Donald Trump's track record is a disaster for working people. And he's trying to gaslight people all over our country. But we know the facts, and we know the truth. He is an existential threat to America's labor movement.
So that's rich. Under Donald Trump, this is the first time that wages went up in decades. It's the first time that the gap between rich and poor narrowed. The first time that the gap between black and white narrowed. What on earth is she talking about?
The working class got a bigger percentage tax cut rate than the more wealthy did. There's a reason that the Teamsters Union did not endorse her. And now the firefighters did not endorse her. By the time she showed up, there was no endorsement waiting for her. By a slim margin, the International Association of Firefighters declined to back any candidate. The union reps more than 300,000 career firefighters and emergency responders. They were the first to endorse Biden at the outset of his campaign against Trump in 2019. This time around, nothing, which seems to clearly suggest it's another Teamsters situation where the membership backs Trump, but the leaders don't want to say that. So I don't know if this is her new sharper messaging, like he's an existential threat. They've been saying all that stuff. Is there another tool in the arsenal to get meaner about Trump?
Well, it's also kind of comical. I mean, because I have a morbid sense of humor, it is kind of funny to watch them worry that Donald Trump will do things like try to put his political opponents in jail. You know, basically all they've tried to do is put Trump in jail. It's kind of amazing that they can get away with it. But I guess when you have a dishonest and corrupt press, you can get away with it. But it's sort of comical. I mean, everything that they accuse him of doing, they're doing. And if you talk to some left-wingers, as I occasionally do, they'll tell you, well, that's okay because it's all right when you do it to Trump, but it's not all right when you do it. If you do it to anybody else, it then suddenly magically becomes a threat to democracy. I really I'm kind of optimistic. I'm not usually optimistic about elections, and I absolutely do not know what's going to happen. I think it's completely unclear. I think when you guess, you have a 50-50 chance of being right. But right now, it just as a gut feeling, I'm kind of optimistic because I think Trump is doing pretty well, and I think he's sort of saying the things that he needs to say. And I think slowly, Kamala Harris's the illusion of Kamala Harris is falling apart, and people are remembering, oh yeah, we always hated her. They always hated her. The press hated her. The people hated her. She's never won a vote for anything, you know, in terms of her presidential run. So I don't know. I think that right now, whatever they're doing is not only not working, I think it's also the opposite of working. I think she's actually losing. They say the polls aren't moving, but I suspect they are. I think they're moving in Trump's direction.
You can sense a bit of panic. Why else would we be seeing Tim Walz on Fox News? Why would we be seeing Kamala Harris on 60, which is a very big risk for her, not to mention all those other places I just mentioned? And why else would we be seeing the New York Times? The New York Times tried to go deep on Trump's age. May I remind this audience, which they already know because we discussed this when they were refusing for quite some time to report on Biden and his age. This is the paper that wrote the piece, quote, "For Joe Biden, what seems like age might instead be style. It might be a style thing." And it went on. I mean, it was very long and it was very absurd. And they compared him to how In some cases, the older artist revisits familiar themes with a new sense of playfulness and freedom, like Henry Matisse making cutouts, Shakespeare bending the rules of the game in The Winter's Tale and The Tempest, or Bob Dylan reshuffling the pages of his songbook. So a late style, they say, is to highlight the way certain artists at the end of their careers enter a new and distinctive phase of creativity. That's how they wanted us to look. He's Dylan. He's Matisse. But now they get to Trump. And yesterday, the top story yesterday on the New York Times website was as follows. Trump's speeches, increasingly angry and rambling, reignite the question of age. Subtitle, with the passage of time, the 78-year-old former president's speeches have grown darker, harsher, longer, angrier, less focused, more profane, and increasingly fixated on the past, according to a review of his public appearances over the years. All right, now you're going to love this. Here's just a couple of things that they pull out. According to a computer analysis by The Times, Mr. Trump's rally speeches now last an average of 82 minutes, compared with 45 in 2016. That makes him older, you see, Andrew. That's evidence of his advanced age, that he can go longer. Proportionately, he uses 13% more all or nothing terms, like always and never, than he did 8 years ago, which some experts consider a sign of advancing age. Always and never. Those are no-nos if you want to seem young. Similarly, he uses 32% more negative words than positive words now, compared with 21% in 2016. That makes no sense, which can be another indicator of cognitive change. You see, he's more negative than positive, which means he's old. Then here's another one. He uses swear words 69% more often than he did when he first ran, a trend that could reflect what experts call disinhibition. Well, then I have it too, because I use a lot more swears than I ever had in my life. I too am, I guess, having dementia. He cites fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter and said, "Where's Johnny Carson? Bring back Johnny," who died in 2005, and goes on about how attractive Cary Grant was. This is their evidence that Trump is too old and is enfeebled.
Well, it's possible he's citing Hannibal Lecter because he's running against Tim Walz, but it's also just possible these may be signs of his replaying in a Bob Dylan like way.
Yeah.
He's changing up his songbook, the Trump songbook.
Why isn't it his Dylan period, Andrew? I don't get it. Why isn't he late Matisse?
Obviously, this is like him in the Village, in 1962. And I think, I don't understand exactly. I'd like them to produce the article in which they said his speeches weren't angry, in which the New York Times said his speeches weren't negative and weren't angry. And so they're really disappointed now because he's moved from being just so sweet.
What about her?
He was just so
if she's
sweet.
going to go negative now, is she going to get the same analysis that she's now gotten more negative than positive versus where she was 3 months ago?
Well, that's just her Bob Dylan-like artistic. As she grows older, she's kind of replaying. But in Trump, it's obviously dementia and
it's decline.
Insanity. It's great. I mean, the New York Times is a hilarious newspaper. I read it every day and get a lot of laughs out of it. But it's sad. Yeah, it used to actually be. I know you're probably not old enough to remember this, but it actually used to be a good newspaper.
Yeah, it's been a long, long time. There is some hope happening, not at the New York Times, but I am somewhat encouraged, not like overly, but I'm somewhat encouraged to see Saturday Night Live get a little funny and take aim not just at the Republicans. It seems like it's trying. It's, of course, much more pointed and nasty toward the Trump team than it is towards the Dems. But to do anything with the Dems is progress from where we were. They took on the VP debate this Saturday, and here's a bit of that in SOT 22.
He's out there. He's doing his thing, whatever that may be.
Okay, come on, just relax. You haven't had a night off in 3 months. Do you want to watch something less stressful like the Menendez Brothers show?
I don't know, Dougie. I kind of wish I had picked Josh right now.
Oh, Josh Shapiro?
No, Josh. Cabernet.
Look, it'll be fine. It's not like he's going to say something crazy.
I've become friends with school shooters.
She breaks the wine glass.
It's a good imitation, too, actually.
Appreciate it. Oh, Jim Gaffigan's very funny.
It's nice, it is nice to see, because the fact that they have actually stopped making fun of one side. First of all, I think it's terrible for the country that there is no comedian on mainstream TV, on late night TV, making fun of the left. Everybody can laugh at himself if you're also laughing at the other guy. But if they're only attacking you night after night, you're going to turn them off and you're going to get angry. And it's just loud. Stephen Colbert is bad for the country. It is bad medicine to have some guy who's just promoting left-wing ideas and left-wing people and then constantly attacking anybody who thinks that Donald Trump is worthwhile. It actually is bad for the country. So it's really nice on that sense to see them laughing at the other side a little bit. But also the other side is funnier than we are. I mean, they are just more incompetent. They lie more. They're so comfortable in their cocoon of the press that they actually do expose themselves a lot more than we do. We have to be a lot more careful. Some of the stuff that you opened the show with when you were talking about the mistakes that Republicans make, J.D. Vance talking about cat ladies and all this stuff. The only reason those mistakes get blown up so much is because they cover them so completely. They keep covering them endlessly anytime somebody makes a gaffe on the right, or if somebody makes a gaffe on the left, it's just their Bob Dylan phase. And I think that it really is bad for the country to have a media that only does that. And it's especially bad on the entertainment media, where we all participate and we all want to be entertained. And I'm willing to laugh at my fellow conservatives if they will also let me laugh at the left. And that would be a healthy thing for both sides.
Exactly. It's like all the fact checkers after that VP debate, fact checking Tim Walz on his lies about Minnesota laws, just keep saying needs context. The fact checks that are needs context. And then they just repeat exactly what the accusations against him were and as true. But you've added no context. What you've done is you've fact checked him as telling a lie without admitting that you just caught him in a lie. Here's a little bit more from SNL with, quote, Tim Walz and, quote, President Biden.
You claimed you were in Hong Kong during the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre when you were home in Minnesota. Can you explain that?
So I think what happened is I went to Epcot. You can go around the whole world, and I had a couple in the Germany section, and I thought I went to China. Anyway, I'm a knucklehead.
You've been watching this guy? Come on, Walz. What's wrong with that guy? He's crazy. Get your facts straight, Jack. You gotta hit him with a no joke. Here's the deal. Let me be clear.
Nora, it's rich to say that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy when he peacefully gave over power. We said no fact-checking. And willingly, don't check that, got on his plane without incident, right after saving Obamacare. Don't check that.
Well, if we're allowed to stand up here and lie, then I would like to say I actually was in Tiananmen Square.
That's a fair joke, yeah. It makes
good.
It so much
does
easier.
make you feel like there's there's some hope that they realize. By the way, they've killed their entire genre, right? They've killed it. Like Colbert's dead, Kimmel's dead. All the late night shows are getting crushed by Gutfeld. They're starting to realize if the other way, the Colbert way, is not the way, it's not a good business model, they're probably sick of losing.
Well, I'd almost say it means you should bring back Johnny Carson, but I wouldn't want the New York Times to think I was getting old. I think that was an actual thing. My father was a comedian. He had a big radio show in New York, and he would always hit one side and then the other side, even though he was a staunch left-winger. Johnny Carson did the same thing. He was a staunch Democrat his whole life, but he always had a joke for the right and a joke for the left. And it's healthy. It's a healthy thing to do, especially when you have what is essentially a town square like network television, where people are gathered together of all different kinds and persuasions. And it's just bad. It really does strike me, when I see Colbert, and you have to hope ultimately it's bad for their business model, because what happens is the more you serve the left, the more you have to serve the left, right? The New York Times can't even run an op-ed that's slightly to the right because their readership is now so entirely left-wing that they will be offended to hear an opposing opinion. So once you start doing that, once you start slanting it, it kind of builds on itself until finally that's your whole audience. And now you've got audience capture. You're stuck playing to that audience again and again.
We heard the MSNBC producer caught under cover last week by James O'Keefe saying exactly that. He was a weekend producer for MSNBC saying we can't really challenge the Democrats because our audience gets mad and we get a bunch of letters. And, now he said we've made our viewers dumber. Okay, let's take a pause because I'm going to squeeze in a quick break and then we're going to come back and I want to talk about Butler, you want to talk about joy. I mean, it was joyous and it was profound. It was moving. That's next. You know how much my family and I love our dogs, right? Yes, we do. I mean, 99% of the time we love, always with Thunder Strudwick. He's tough. Right now he's eating all of my pumpkins in my front lawn. All of them. The fall display. I guess we can't have that anymore. Still, there's love. My dogs have a great life, thankfully, but too many dogs are not so lucky. And this is why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue. It is the largest no-kill, that's what you want to hear, care for life animal sanctuary in the world. These guys have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all the animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. And they have been doing it now for more than 45 years. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping these animals who are in such need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love Thunder and Strudwick, but would like for other dogs who need love to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. 4 years of crushing interest rates, runaway inflation, and reckless government spending. And who is paying the price? You are. You might have bills stacking up, debt collectors on your back, and you might be barely able to keep food on the table. Done with Debt can be a way out. They have developed new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt stands between you and your bill collectors. They can go head-to-head with creditors, getting balances reduced, interest rates slashed, and penalties stopped. They create a plan to end your debt fast and put more cash in your pocket every month. And right now, Done with Debt is accepting new clients, but you do need to act fast. Some credit relief programs expire. Before you even make another payment, consider a visit to donewithdebt.com or call 1-888-322-1054 right now. 1-888-322-1054 right now. Speak with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Go to donewithdebt.com. That's donewithdebt.com. On Saturday, former President Trump, amazingly, went back to Butler, Pennsylvania. It's really incredible to hold a rally 12 weeks after he was nearly assassinated to the day. Look at these shots of the huge crowd. According to Fox News, it was about 60,000 who showed up. The campaign used cranes to once again fly a massive American flag above the stage. When Mr. Trump took to the stage, he stood behind thick, bulletproof glass. At one point during his speech, he also welcomed Elon Musk to the stage. Look at him jumping up for joy. He was jumping around before telling the crowd he's, quote, dark MAGA, and saying he believes Trump must win to preserve the Constitution. Here are a couple of highlights from the night in SOT 1.
A big thank you to Pennsylvania. We love Pennsylvania. And as I was saying, get astronauts into space. Come here. Take over, Elon.
Elon's jumping.
Fist pumping after getting shot. Fight, fight, fight. Young man, there's no need to feel down. I said,
he's dancing the Trump dance.
Yourself off the ground. I said, young man, 'cause you're in a new town.
Wow. For those of you wondering, Elon's t-shirt read Occupy Mars. Think of what it must have taken, Andrew, for him to go back there and just get right back up and make a joke out of it, as I was saying when he turned his head.
You know, Elon Musk said this when he interviewed him on X and said, it's just inspiring what he did. And that's something that a president should be, inspiring. And it makes me think back to when he got COVID and he stepped out on the balcony of the White House and took his mask off, and the press dissolved in tears. I mean, it was, I thought one of the most shameful moments in American journalism was Jake Tapper saying, when Trump said, you don't have to be afraid of COVID, you shouldn't let it dominate your life. Jake Tapper said, no, you should be afraid and you should let it dominate your life. Well, they can't erase this. They can't erase the fact that somebody shot a bullet at this guy. It hit him in the ear, and he stood up and shook his fist. And, you know, Musk made a joke of it at the Butler reunion. He made a joke saying one president can't even get up a flight of stairs and the other president shakes his fist after getting shot. But, you know, there is something to that. It's not just rhetoric. I mean, you do want a president who is going to lead in attitude, not just in policy. And that is something, you know, I don't think we've had in quite a while, you know, the kind of FDR who stands up and says we have nothing to fear but fear itself. I think Trump embodies that, and he has proven that he is who he says he is. He is the tough guy and the brave guy that he says he is. And at this point, you can dislike him, but you can't disrespect him, because that is something that you do not see that often. You don't get a chance to see it that often. Somebody who reacts like that under fire. It really was an inspiring moment, and it's going to be an inspiring moment no matter how the left tries to push it down the memory hole.
That's one of the things he's talking about when he says, I'm going to protect women. He's talking about keeping us safe, keeping us and our children out of wars, trying not to get us bombed or killed by Iranians or their generals, or our sons and daughters killed in outposts. It takes that kind of strength to do those kinds of things, and also to project to the world, don't mess with us. You'll be sorry. Trust us. It's not going to go well for you. Biden has exactly the opposite projection, and it's gotten us into a lot of trouble. I think most people can see that. Elon Musk actually tweeted out a video of a young woman. I don't know her. I don't think she's a public person, talking about how she's a Democrat. She hated Trump. She believed all the narratives about him in the media. And it was actually COVID that started to turn her opinion around on the guy when she watched him come out and say exactly what you just said, Andrew. She recognized, though the media freaked out in response to his messaging, this is our leader who's trying to keep us calm and keep a positive attitude and maintain normalcy and not create a panic. You know, same as what we saw in Butler that day when he was still bleeding from his head.
Yeah, and I remember the press attacking anybody who said, you know, during COVID, there are worse things than death. But there are. Dishonor is worse, and cowardice is worse, and weakness in the face of true danger is worse. And the press wants us to forget that. They want to manipulate us. They want to use our fears to manipulate us, and they can't do it unless they can cause panic. They want us to panic over everything. The weather is a cause of panic. Whatever we do to get energy out of the ground is a cause of panic. Everything is a cause of panic, because if we're panicked, they can control us. And to see a president take a bullet to the ear and stand up and shake his fist, that's the opposite. That's a calming thing. That makes you think, okay, somebody's in charge who can handle it when the 3 o'clock in the morning call comes. There's just no question that when Donald Trump brags that he will go to Putin and tell him, look, you're going to do certain things or you're going to have to deal with me, that is more impressive than Kamala Harris or Joe Biden doing it. When he says it to Iran, when he says it to China, you know they're listening. And when he hands a terrorist a picture of his house and says, we're going to drop a bomb on that house if you don't do what we want you to do, you're going to believe him, because he is who he says he is. That was an important moment. It wasn't just an inspiring one. It was an important moment and a defining moment for the Trump personality and for the Trump campaign.
At the same time, we get how many pieces on Kamala and what a wonderful stepmother she is, and what a wonderful aunt she is, and no coverage of Trump's tender moments with his sons and his daughters or his grandkids, or this woman who is one of the paramedics who took care of Trump in the wake of the shooting in Butler. She spoke for a bit on Saturday, and it was really lovely. Here she is.
That evening, I witnessed a man with a deeply rooted bond with his family. I heard him speak with his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. He let them know that he was safe and that he was being taken care of. I heard his daughter say, "Only by the grace of God, you are here." The man that we all see on TV with the strong personality, who sometimes doesn't mince for words, or who is seen as a wealthy, powerful businessman, was not the man that I stood beside that evening. What I saw was a man that, in the aftermath of one of the most terrifying experiences of his life, showed resiliency. He showed strength and courage. He showed that his family was at the forefront. He was a husband, a father, and a grandfather. He was compassionate and grateful. He was kind and humble. Several times I stood and stared at him with tears rolling down my cheeks. He was someone's dad. He's a human just like you and me. I held the hand of that man who sends out the mean tweets, and I thanked him for loving our country and fighting for our freedoms. He assured me that he is doing everything he can to save our country, and I believe this to be true now more than ever.
Wow. What do you make of it?
Well, you look at Trump's children and they really have turned out well. You don't have to like them, but they've turned out well. They're successful. And then you look at some other people's children, and maybe not so much. And I think that does say something. It does say something about a man. There's no question about it. Nobody's going to look at his, marriage record and say, good for Donald Trump. He's been a great husband. But he obviously is a man who the people around him love him, and his kids love him and his grandkids love him. And that does say something about him. I mean, as a person, I think there's far more to him than the press wants us to see.
Mm-hmm. It's one thing if you're not going to make her into the mom. If you don't want to do either one of them, I'm fine with that. But if you're going to do it for the one, you got to take an honest look at the other. And Trump is a loving dad and granddad, and there's really no two ways around it. Great to see you, Andrew. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Megyn. It's good to see you.
Kamala's on 60 tonight. I'll give you my thoughts tomorrow.